So the thing is, when you're looking at these different types of products, the Russians actually believe in this theory called trees and its technique. And the foundation of trees is they believe that everything, all the problems in the universe have already been solved. However, what it comes down to is you need to figure out how to connect that solution with your problem. And this is where analogy becomes so powerful. And the powerful analogy, which the light went on for M33, is when they figured out we are not selling Toyotas, we are selling Land Rovers. And subsequently, that's how I can try. Once I understand that analogy, I can say, okay, what are the things that Land Rover did? And to try to find things that are similar to what I can do. And so in this big sea of people, how do you find your customers? How do you reduce the noise? And the thing is, you're going to have detractors. You're going to have people who are going to bash your product left and right. And at the end of the day, can I make money? Okay, what a minimally viable product is, the MVP, is basically the smallest possible feature set that you can sell. And why did all of this get started? It all got started because of Silicon Valley. And in Silicon Valley, what happened is you had these bunch of geeky engineers. And so the Lean Sigma, which is a book by Eric Ries, and has sort of become the Bible for startups. The thing is, what he got to is that your minimally viable product is essentially to stop all this over-engineering and just sitting around and working on features and never knowing whether or not somebody wants it or works. And that's how this all got started. And so this is pretty much the process. It's in Blank's book, so I'll just let you read about it. But there's a difference between if you're selling brick and mortar and web and mobile. And so brick and mortar, what is it about? Well, basically, if somebody walks in and has traveled to a place, they're looking for something very specific. And so you need to essentially focus more on what the benefits are and features. The thing about web-based services or mobile-based products like apps or whatever, what people are looking more for is what is the story? Is this going to help my product? And so when you look at the structure of how people make decisions, the more you're talking about a company, the more you're interested in the decision process. And the more you're talking about things like psychographics, the more you're talking about the more you're talking about individual people and how they think. And if you have something that's in the middle, now you're talking about deal makers and also influencers of the decision. In terms of the flow sensor, originally we had all these sensors that people wanted. We were going to build big cluster sensors. But what happened is that we looked at it and we said, we don't need all this stuff. The core of all this is the flow sensing. That's what they love, because the flow sensing enables smaller size, lower cost, and everything else. And then the other sensors did that. That was the core of it. And so subsequently, we reduced the feature set. The limitations of using an MVP approach is you're focusing on features. But are you selling features or are you selling a product? There's a difference. Are you selling a product or are you selling a company? Different kinds of mindsets. Again, you're worried about obsolescence. And the thing is, the entire approach is still legitimate. But the thing is you want to amaze your customers. You just don't want to give them the bare minimum. And so in terms of decision-making units, we've talked about this before in terms of who are the decision makers and who has an impact on the decision. The thing about when you look at decision-making units is how many people are involved? How much time can they take? Whose authority is it? What is the magnitude of the sale? Everybody in a corporation has a sign-off level, meaning they can only buy so much, and then if your price tag goes above that, then you have to go talk to someone else. The thing is, Blank and Dorff's book. And this is what I like about Blankendorf. Some people say, oh my God, what a mess. But the thing is, they really do dig into the details. And so their approach to MVP is segment, pick a beachhead, make an end user profile, figure out who your TAM is, and what the profile persona is. And so here are the number of issues that go into thinking about when you're picking a beachhead. And that's, how much money do you have? I mean, even if you're working for a corporation, you have a budget, and that pretty much tells you how much you can reasonably do. Maybe you need to go out and get partners, end user, one-sided or two-sided. And that's like the haircut app. It's a two-sided application. Why? I need somebody who can cut the hair and somebody who wants their hair cut. That is a much, much more difficult challenge because now you have to get two sets of people and not one. In terms of end user profile, these are some of the variables that you look at. We talked about persona. Dr. Cho, why are you repeating all this stuff? Why am I repeating all this stuff? Because if this lecture had to stand alone, you would need that information. But that's why I can go through it quickly. And so what it really comes down to, what the whole crux is you need to figure out how a business works. If you're going after individuals, you need reach. You need to touch as many people as possible. And the way we get reach is through network effects, diffusion. And we'll be talking about that. So what the MVP process is, and this refers to Six Sigma, and it's all the same idea, and all they did is take Six Sigma and apply it to this. And that's it. When you think about going through a process, it's first, how do you define it? How can I measure it? How can I analyze it? Then improve it. Then I have to control it. And so you come up with an idea and a hypothesis. You test to see whether or not your idea is correct. For example, we believe that people really value bubble sensing. And as it turns out, they had alternative ways of doing it. So in terms of test and analysis, we decided, hey, we don't have to worry about that. And then you get to the point where you can validate it and then verify it. Some of the issues in MVP is the basic idea is that this helps you get to cache earlier. If I don't have to work on all unnecessary stuff, I can just focus. The thing about MVP is it has a tendency to favor software over hardware, physical products. And the reason why is because they say, well, with software, what is your cost? Your cost is basically human sweat and electrons. But if you're doing a physical product, every time you build something, that has a cost built into it. You don't have an infinite number of iteration cycles. Not only that, physical products, yes, software works at the speed of electrons. But physical products, no. If it needs to go into an oven for 10 hours, it needs to go into an oven for 10 hours. And it's sort of like the old saying, 9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. I mean, there are certain limitations. The thing you have to be careful about is not to fail too much. And that's when you start to fail multiple times. Because they say, get out there and with a crappy product, if you fail, don't worry about it. No. You leave an impression. Or you have to make sure your customers are okay if it doesn't work. And one of the great failures of all time was software arts. Software arts saw Windows and said, this is a feature of computing. Software arts had the dominant spreadsheet. That was the first application for the PC. They stopped working on their spreadsheets and they started focusing totally on Windows. And it was a total disaster. First of all, they pissed off their employees, and one of them went out and started a competing company, Lotus 123. And before Excel, Lotus was the biggest spreadsheet company in the world. But then what happened is when they released their product, Windows, first of all, they clicked on it, and it took like 3 minutes to boot up. And then when it booted up, they would like click on a file, and it'd be like... And the problem is that the processor speed and RAM didn't exist to support the product, and that's why it was a total flop. The problem is software arts didn't defend their cash flow, and subsequently they went under. And this is where the brilliance of Bill Gates was. He knew Windows was the future too, but he looked at it and said, you know something? The hardware and software doesn't exist. So that's why they sold DOS systems. He basically found himself a nice foxhole, sat in there, waited until the infrastructure could support what his vision was, and then they took off. The other and most important point is, how much more would it take you to make an amazing product versus a minimal product? The thing is, good products are about platforms and architecture. The thing is, how does your product reach out and touch other things? Your long-term goal is you're trying to form a lifetime relationship with the customer. And the thing is, in order to get continued sales, a minimal product doesn't quite work. The thing is, there's also too much testing, and that's your waste can reach upwards of 70% of what you're doing. And so there comes a point where you have to do something, you have to make a move. But where MVP does have validity is you have to get into a flexible mentality. So the thing is, this is just a summary of everything I've talked about so far. It's about cash, and there is legitimacy to MVP. You need to get out there and all, but be careful about how you go about doing it. And so the last part of our lecture is going to be about positioning, which is the last part of the strategic design. And essentially what positioning is, and oh my God, a lot of you are going to get this wrong, it's going to drive me crazy. Positioning is, compared to this universe of features and values and everything else, where does your company sit in the mind